Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at Noon, the ruling party's landslide victory in Wednesday's by-elections and a comeback to Parliament of President Park Geun-hye's key aide Seo Chung-won is expected to herald major changes in Korean politics. More than half of Korea's listed companies saw their profits tumble in the third quarter. Among the worst performers were construction companies and oil refiners. But those specializing in IT are bucking the trend. Plus, in a widely expected move, the US Federal Reserve decides to keep its massive bond-buying stimulus program intact, saying the recovery is not strong enough. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at Noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Korea's ruling Saenuri Party swept to victory in both of Wednesday's by-elections, which were seen as a key test of public sentiment towards the Park Geun-hye administration.
Analysts expect the strong showing to spark a major power shift within the party. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The Hwasong A district in Gyeonggi Province and the South Poang Ulleung Island district in North Gyeongsang Province have elected new representatives. Both regions are considered traditional strongholds of the conservative ruling Saenuri Party, and the ruling party's candidates won the elections by large margins. The Hwasong A constituency had a vacant seat in the National Assembly after the death of ruling party lawmaker Ko Hee-sun in August. On Wednesday, voters in the district elected Seo Chung-won of the ruling party as its new representative. Seo, a former six-term lawmaker, garnered more than 60% of the votes, followed by Oh Il-yong of the main opposition Democratic Party with roughly 30%. The seat in the South Poang Ulleung constituency was open because Kim Young-tae, formerly of the ruling party, was found guilty of illegal campaigning and lost his seat in July. In this district, Bang Myung-jae, former Minister of Public Administration, won the election with roughly 80% support, beating Heo Dae-man of the main opposition Democratic Party by a large margin. Observers say the outcome of the by-election is sure to bring about a major power shift within the ruling party. With Wednesday's victory, the ruling party's Seo Chung-won will enter the National Assembly as a seventh-term lawmaker. Seo, who's considered one of the closest allies of President Park Geun-hye, outranks two key pro-Park figures, Representatives Kim Moo-sung and Choi Kyung-hwan, in terms of seniority, which tends to carry significant weight in Korean politics. Lawmaker Kim Moo-sung is serving his fifth term, while Choi Kyung-hwan, who's the floor leader of the ruling party at the moment, is serving his third term. The main opposition Democratic Party, which had urged voters to sound an alarm on the Park Geun-hye administration during the campaigning by voting for their candidates, said it humbly accepted the election results and would seek to reform the party to be more competitive in future elections. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
The ruling party's victory Wednesday will help it regain political momentum after a series of scandals, including allegations that the spy agency carried out an online smear campaign in the run-up to last year's presidential election. But with the return of Seo Chung-won, one of President Park's closest associates, the real game within the ruling party has just begun. Our Han Dan explains why.
Seo Chung-won, the newly elected representative of the Hwasong A district in Gyeonggi Province, is one of President Park Geun-hye's closest aides and has served the president since long before she became the nation's first female leader. The six-term lawmaker was one of the president's so-called 7 advisors during her election campaign and played a major role in her victory. His election win has prompted questions about the impact he will have on the ruling party's leadership. The general consensus within the party is that Seo will put the brakes on the rise of pro-Park Geun-hye figure Kim Moo-sung, who has been touted as the sole candidate for party leader. Speculation was high that Seo was put into Wednesday's race by the presidential office, which hasn't been happy with Kim's increasing influence within the party following a series of detours from his pro-Park stance. The next party leader will likely be nominated to run for president in the next election set for 2016, and analysts are predicting it'll be more than just a two-way race between Seo and Kim. If Gyeonggi Governor Kim Moon-soo, as well as another key pro-Park figure, Yoo Sung-min, decide to challenge the party, a fierce, multipolar competition is expected. Some political pundits also say that Seo's return could divide the party into two, the mainstream and the others. They worry that the division could work against President Park's goal of unity and could hamper the administration in carrying out major national policies. 한다은, 아리랑 뉴스.
President Park says she will ensure that allegations the spy agency meddled in last year's presidential election are clarified and that those involved will be held responsible. In addition, she once again made clear that she did not do anything that could have been construed as illegal in her campaign. During a meeting with her senior aides on Thursday, President Park urged the nation's political parties to wait for the judicial branch instead of jumping to conclusions based on political motivations. She added that her administration will devise measures to prevent election meddling by state agencies and public officials in the future. Korea's IT exports are growing at a fast pace, with the amount in the first 9 months of the year reaching nearly $100 billion. That's up more than 9% from the same period last year and far outstrips to the 1.3% growth of all exports in the same period, according to the Institute for International Trade. Exports of semiconductors, telecommunications devices, and printed circuit boards rose by the biggest margin. Most of exports were bound for China, Vietnam, and Hong Kong, but shipments to the United States and Japan declined.
Aside from the country's IT companies that have been enjoying a surge in exports, it seems most other local firms are still suffering from the global economic downturn. Yulian reports.
Nearly half of Korea's listed companies have turned in their third quarter report cards, and things aren't looking so good. Of the 51 companies reporting, over 40% saw lower operating profits in the July to September period compared to the same period last year, according to the Financial Supervisory Service on Thursday. The companies that saw their operating profits rise were mostly from the IT sector. 5 of the 7 IT companies on the list, including Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, which have been enjoying an upswing in exports of memory chips, all saw their operating profits rise by a big margin. But most companies, especially those in the construction and oil refining sectors, saw their operating profits drop. Companies like Samsung Engineering fell into the red, and the oil refiner S-Oil saw its operating profit drop by over 95%. Auto giants Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors also turned in worse than expected third quarter performance reports, prompting experts to warn that forecasts for fourth quarter operating profit are being revised downwards. But it's a similar story elsewhere around the world. IBK Securities and the profit rating agency IBES said Thursday expectations for earnings profit per share, which serves as an indicator of corporate profitability, have fallen for most major economies around the world. Corporate profit forecasts for the next 12 months for countries like Spain, Britain, and Korea were all expected to fall, and by an even greater margin in developing countries like Portugal and Indonesia. Only 6 of the 45 countries had a positive corporate profit outlook, including Russia, Taiwan, and Japan. While stock prices are on the rise following U.S. plans to keep its stimulus program in place, experts say the pace could slow, given the poor profitability outlook. Yulian, Arirang News.
A former U.S. official has urged the Japanese Prime Minister to refrain from visiting the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, which honors Japan's war dead. In a video message sent to a forum in Tokyo, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia, Kurt Campbell, said that if Shinzo Abe were to pay respects at the war shrine, it would destabilize Japan's relations with Korea and China. There's growing speculation Abe may visit Yasukuni in late December for the first time as Prime Minister to mark his first year in office. He has so far made 3 offerings to the shrine in the past 12 months. Yasukuni honors Japan's war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. And visits to the shrine by Japanese politicians and lawmakers are seen as a glorification of the country's imperialistic past. Japan's notorious Unit 731 is well known for the horrific experiments it carried out on humans in the 1930s. A previously classified document has emerged that shows Japanese troops acting under orders from Unit 731 released plague viruses on a Chinese village. Thousands of civilians were killed, but Japan refuses to acknowledge the atrocity or apologize. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Japan's Unit 731 was based in the northeastern Chinese city of Harbin in the late 1930s and conducted terribly cruel experiments on thousands of prisoners of war for several years. Now claims have surfaced that Unit 731 not only tested on POWs, but also on thousands of Chinese civilians. Classified Japanese documents recently revealed over 10,000 plague-infected fleas were released in the Chinese city of Jinlin, killing thousands of civilians.
The live testing on ordinary citizens is unprecedented in the history of ethics.
Anti-Japan activists were also falsely accused of being spies and subject to live testing. Experts say Japan justified the experiments by saying they were conducted to better prepare for germ warfare and to enhance preventive measures.
The failure to punish those involved in Unit 731 has led to attempts by the Abe administration and the far right to reintroduce militarism.
The Japanese government remains tight-lipped about Unit 731, and activists say Tokyo still shows little sign of remorse, despite the mounting evidence that shows the scope of the unit's brutality. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at Noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
This won't come as much of a surprise to most people, but the U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to keep its stimulus program in place for the time being. Fed officials decided to keep interest rates low and to continue pumping tens of billions of dollars a month into bond purchases until the economy improves. Our Connie Lee reports.
It was a decision that was widely expected. On Wednesday, the U.S. Federal Reserve announced it would maintain its stimulus bond buying program at the current level of $85 billion a month. It also decided to keep interest rates at record lows. The stimulus program has been in place for more than a year now, and the central bank has held interest rates near zero since late 2008. The Fed's Open Market Committee showed less optimism about growth in its latest report, saying the U.S. economy is still only growing at a moderate pace. And while the temporary government shutdown earlier in October was not explicitly mentioned, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke has often argued that the policies of lawmakers in Washington are hurting economic growth. The Fed also noted that the housing market has been slowing in recent months. Some positive news, though, with the Fed saying consumer and business spending has been picking up. In the meantime, 2 separate reports also released on Wednesday supported the Fed's decision to continue with its stimulus policy. One report shows that private sector employers hired the fewest number of workers in 6 months in October. And the other report showed the U.S. Consumer Price Index is still showing benign inflation. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Investors in Facebook are sure to like this next story, as the social networking giant has posted third quarter revenues of over $2 billion. Facebook says revenue from advertising grew by 66% to $1.8 billion, with nearly half gleaned from mobile ads. The 3-month period was Facebook's most successful quarter to date. Facebook's shares surged 15% in after-hours trading on Wednesday. Shares in Facebook have nearly doubled in value since July, when the company first announced a big jump in its mobile advertising revenue. Turning to the latest on the U.S. spying scandal. A new report claims the U.S. spied on the Vatican in the run-up to the conclave to elect a new pope. The U.S. National Security Agency says the reports are not true. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
The National Security Agency has moved to deny fresh claims it spied on the Vatican before the conclave. Italian magazine Panorama, which cites no source for the information, says the NSA eavesdropped on phone calls to and from the Vatican up until March, when Pope Francis was elected. In a statement Wednesday, NSA spokeswoman Vanny Vine said the NSA did not target the Vatican and that the claims were incorrect. The Vatican said that it was unaware of the fact its calls may have been monitored, and added that it has no concerns about it, even if it were true. Earlier this week, NSA Director General Keith Alexander was forced to deny allegations the U.S. collected telephone and email records directly from European citizens. Alexander was referring to claims the NSA had collected data on tens of millions of phone calls in France, Spain, and elsewhere. He said NATO allies collected and shared the information with the U.S.
This is not information that we collected on European citizens. It represents information that we and our NATO allies have collected in defense of our countries and in support of military operations.
Washington has come under fire after reports the U.S. had been tapping into the phone calls of German Chancellor Angela Merkel for years. German officials are at the White House to address the allegations. The reports come at a time when the White House said it will review its surveillance activities and consider toning down their scope. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And the allegations keep on coming. The chief of the embattled NSA has denied a new report that claims his agency tapped into Google and Yahoo's data centers around the world. Citing documents provided by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden and interviews with unnamed officials, the Washington Post said the NSA has secretly broken into the main communications links that connect Yahoo and Google overseas data centers. NSA Director General Keith Alexander said it never happened and called the report factually incorrect. He added that the NSA gains access to data by, quote, court order, and it would not be breaking into databases. Google and Yahoo both deny any involvement and say they have never given access to their data centers to the NSA or any other government agency. It's the first of its kind in the world, and this week a Bitcoin ATM went online in Vancouver. Now, if you haven't heard of Bitcoin yet, don't worry, you're not alone. It's still a relatively new digital currency. Our Son Jung-in explains how Bitcoin could change the way we exchange money forever.
People are lined up in front of an ATM at a coffee shop in Vancouver. But instead of pressing buttons, they have their palm prints or smartphone scanned to confirm their identity so they can withdraw money from their virtual wallet in the form of Bitcoin, a new form of digital currency. This is one of the first Bitcoin ATMs in the world, which started operating in Canada on Tuesday. The machine makes it possible for people to exchange virtual Bitcoin for Canadian dollars, and this coffee shop is one of at least 20 businesses in the country that currently accept Bitcoin.
This machine is giving people unprecedented access to the currency like never before.
We got into Bitcoin to target a new demographic of customers for our restaurant.
Bitcoin was launched in 2008 by a developer known only as Satoshi Nakamoto. The virtual money can be bought with near anonymity, which some say lowers the risk of fraud and increases privacy, and it's gaining a hold among businesses and consumers.
The short answer of what is a Bitcoin is it is the currency of the internet. It's digital currency that people can use just like they use cash. They can be anywhere in the world. It's entirely borderless.
Bitcoin, currently worth about $210 each, can be transferred without going through banks, thereby cutting fees. Despite some criticism that the currency could be used for money laundering and other illegal activities, operators plan to open more Bitcoin ATM machines at 4 more locations across Canada. 손정인, Arirang News.
More and more South Koreans, and especially women, are living to a ripe old age. The life expectancy of Korean women ranks 3rd in the world now, while Korean men are at 15th on the global scale. Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
A United Nations report released Wednesday shows that the life expectancy of Korean females born between 2010 and 2015 is expected to reach 85, the world's 3rd longest. Japanese women can expect to live longer lives than any other nationality in the world at 87. The life expectancy of Korean males at birth stands at 78, the world's 15th longest, following countries such as Japan, Hong Kong, and Sweden. For both Korean males and females, life expectancy lengthened by a year from 2012. It's not all good news, though, as the country's birth rate remains among the world's lowest. The report projects the global average birth rate between 2010 and 2015 to reach 2.5 live births per woman. Korea's birth rate is expected to record half that, with 1.3 live births. This is down 0.1 live births per woman from a year ago, which is the world's 3rd lowest. The UN report also highlighted the high rate of teenage pregnancy in developing countries, 7.3 million every year, and called on governments to help girls attain their full potential through education and adequate health services. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
Let's now get a check on the weather with our Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-hyun.
Good afternoon, guys. Now, today is Halloween, but it's also Makgeolli Day. Well, makgeolli is a Korean spirit that's made from a mixture of wheat and rice.
Well, I had no idea there was such a thing as a makgeolli Day, but I do know it does give you a terrible hangover if you drink too much of it. But I do also know that Koreans love eating it with the pajeon, which is that kind of spicy pancake we have here.
Yum.
Right, so this is actually the first Makgeolli Day ever. And now for those who don't know what makgeolli is, it's a traditional alcoholic beverage and it's unfiltered. So it has some of the same good bacteria found in yogurt, and it also has some of the fiber, vitamins, and about 6 to 8% alcohol, whereas wine can be up to 20%. So it's relatively healthy alcohol drink. And in honor of the first Makgeolli Day, there will be tasting events around the nation, so be sure to check those out. Now, whether you're planning to celebrate the Halloween or Makgeolli Day or both, the weather should be on our side, as the stretch of beautiful weather we've been having will continue with nice autumn sunshine under clear skies throughout the day. And tomorrow will be a bit milder with highs struggling to reach 20s. Well, that's a good news for sports fan out there, because with all of those events going on today, this will be a big night for baseball here in Korea. Oh, and so Samsung Lions tried to come from behind and defend their title against the Doosan Bears in the Korean series and Game 6 in Daegu tonight at 6 o'clock. And it could be end up determining the winner of the best-of-7 championship. And the weather for the baseball game tonight and tomorrow will be mostly clear, and temperatures in Daegu might be slightly milder than Seoul, but still, be sure to dress in layers to not to get sick. So with that in mind, it's time for us to take a look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 16 degrees Celsius, which is 61 degrees in Fahrenheit, and Daegu and Gwangju will make it to 20, while Busan gets to 21. And it looks like high in Jeju and Daejeon will rise to 19, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 11. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Enjoy your rest of the day, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jiyeon, for your weather report there. And that's pretty much all from us from now. But you can catch up with what's happening in the news on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.
And Mark and I will be back tomorrow on the first day of November right here on Newsline at Noon.